What is up, everybody? Welcome into episode 79 of the Bullpen. And as you can tell, I'm by myself here in the men cave. Producers got things to do. Producers, a very, very busy person, evidently. Even though we did have us a nice 4-day weekend, holiday weekend. Well, 4 days for me, 3 days for most people. But hey, welcome in to the Bullpen from the Cow Pressure on behalf of United Football Media. We're going to go over the scores from last week. We'll talk about the games a little bit. I'm not here totally by myself. I got a special guest, not actually joining me, but I'm going to share some insights from a very special sports broadcaster. Stick around for that and see how it ties the UFL. It's going to be kind of cool. We're going to talk a little player development. We're going to talk about NIL in college. What does that have to do with what we're doing here? We're going to tie all that up together. And then me and producer got together. Instead of doing game highlights and reliving the game that we had this past weekend, we said, hey, we're moving in. Week 9's done, moving into week 10. The Brahma season's over. A lot of stuff going down, players and coach-wise with the team. Everybody knows the season's winding down. So we decided we were going to talk about, each one of us, we're going to talk about the draft. The Brahmas have locked up the number one draft position for next year for the rookie draft. So we'll see not necessarily who we want to see drafted, but what positions we want to see drafted and why. We'll talk a little attendance, and then we'll end it with some Brahma news. And don't go anywhere if you want to know who the head coach is going to be next year, because I got something's happened since our last episode that you might going to want to see. You know, last time we did talk about hypothetical coaches, but stick around. We'll talk about real coaches. And then I'll end it by sharing mine and producers' picks and predictions for the last week of the season and go from there. So before we get going too much further, while everybody's still here, I got to pay some bills, folks. At the time you're watching this is May 27th. This will be posted on YouTube and all of our social medias. We're only a little over a month away from fireworks season in Texas. For those of you not from Texas, and you think that we can pretty much do whatever we want and blow stuff up all the time, year-round, we can. But you can only buy fireworks twice a year, in the summer for the 4th of July and in the winter for New Year's. So Bangers Fireworks sponsors this little podcast for me. And so I am going to throw out our new graphic for this year and also share with you that we have opened up a third location. So you can see all of our locations right there. You can see our email, our Facebook, Bangers Fireworks. Please contact us. And I'll tell you one thing. You won't find better prices anywhere in the San Antonio area. I can promise you, everywhere else you go, the prices will cost more than what they cost there at Bangers. But it's not cheap product, but we do have cheap prices. All right. The bills have been paid. Let's talk football. Okay. So this past week's game, we'll start on the Friday game, the Battlehawks and the Brahmas. This is one of the games, if not the game, we lost because of scheduling conflicts. So we had our home game there at Seattle. It says Battlehawks at Brahmas. Well, we were in St. Louis for this game, 39-13. The best part about this game was, I guess, Kellen Mond came back and he played pretty good. He didn't have a whole lot of yards. Stats didn't light everything up, but he was consistent and no turnovers. We've been seeing a lot of turnovers previous games. Special teams was awesome. We had 2 huge kick returns, and that's what pretty much put us in position to score. So, you know, a lot of things need improvement. You still only scored 13 points. You know, that number definitely needs to be in the 20s, and you only need to be giving up 20 points. You can see we gave up 39, and a lot of those points, and some of those points were given up to backup players. So, you know, it is what it is. But we'll talk about that with our draft predictions and see how it kind of ties into where we think we need the most improvement. Panther Stallions, 26-22. Great game. Just left a little too much time on the clock, Michigan, for Birmingham to come back and take that win. It was nice to see Birmingham. Attendance was up a little bit over the 4,000 they did the previous game. We'll talk about attendance here in a little bit. Renegades and Showboats. Vaughn, man. Perez and Vaughn just went off on this game. But, you know, what can I say about Memphis? They've won twice as many games as we have. So, anyways. And then the Defenders, Roughnecks, a great game. It was nice to see the Roughnecks get a win. Our boy Ace, the VP of content here at United Football Media, has been covering the Roughnecks for a few years now. This is the first win he has got to see in person. So congratulations to him. I'm very happy that he got to see a win in person. We have not seen a win in person in the Alamo Dome for the Brahmas this year, but hopefully next week we'll see if we can do that when Arlington comes to town. But great games, man. If you're not watching UFL, I don't know what's wrong with you. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. On to my super secret, kind of secret special guest. I found this interview. Tim Brando joined at 365 Sports talking about UFL, its value to the NFL, and then kind of tied it back into college football. The main conversation point in this interview was about NIL and money and stuff like that, but we're going to tie it into UFL. First thing we're going to do is say that I truly appreciate everybody who watches this show. Brahma specific show, doesn't get the views of subscribers as a lot of shows do. When I started doing this show, there was no other Brahmas content really being made. Now there's 2 or 3 other podcasts. So if you've been here since the beginning, you're a real one. I appreciate it. Thanks for watching. But I say all that because it's interesting how someone like Tim Brando, who's got years and years and years, he's one of those voices, iconic voices you can just hear on college football, and what he thinks about big media, the traditional media, and then the alternative media, kind of like podcasters and stuff like that. Everybody, we could go talk for days about how podcasts are pretty much running sports talk these days. And it's weird how the UFL and especially some teams in the UFL maybe don't embrace that so much. Like podcasters are fixing to be the mainstream. There's no bigger sports show on the planet right now than Pat McAfee podcast that started on like YouTube and stuff and got picked up by ESPN. And Tim Brando's perspective or thoughts on alternative sports content compared to mainstream sports content. I'm going to just play this little clip right here and we'll talk about it on the backside.
I mean, if I'm doing a sport that I haven't done much of, all right, I had never done a UFL game ever, okay, until this past week. And I was happy to help him out. Kurt Menefee needed the week off. Brando's available. I'm not on the hook to do it. I didn't have to do it. But I was actually enthusiastic about it. I know Skip Holtz really well. I know Anthony Beck really well. And I was happy to do it. And I think you guys both know I'm not a real fan of doing a game from a studio, but I did do this one that way. And frankly, would never want to do a college game that way. But this game was actually, with all the bells and whistles they have, with all the cameras and all the audio access, if you're a football junkie, my God, that's a good watch. I mean, it really is, to listen and react to everything that's going on. And so if they ever ask me again, I'd give it a thought. I wouldn't mind doing a game like that again for that. I wouldn't want to do a college game that way, and certainly not an NFL game. But the reality is, if you haven't, you got to sink your teeth into it. Okay, they got different rules. They've got players that maybe I don't know that much about. I can't go and do the game without what? Preparation. I gotta learn some things. Okay. Well, when you're talking about certain aspects of what's going on in college athletics, and you've got people on that don't know anything about anything other than a couple of players like Arch Manning of the Longhorns, or name that other big time player that's coming back that may be playing at Ole Miss this year, or said team that has such a strong profile. If you can't do that, then you don't want to look dumb, so you keep that out of the block. You don't want to discuss it, and that's what I see from those shows. I see, and that really I'm throwing them all together because I think they are all together. I do, and Colin Cowherd runs a radio show that happens to be televised, and I have a lot of respect for Colin. I don't put him into that category, but all these other shows, I mean, if they're not talking about the Lakers or Aaron Rodgers or something that is either NBA or NFL oriented, then they prefer talking about their next run for president in 28, or maybe a sex tape that they either made or are thinking about making.
So basically what he's saying is, number one, you turn on ESPN, you turn off turn on FS1, you go to all these different sports shows, and they're always talking about the same thing. The boys over at 365 were making fun of, if you want a sport to be covered, just somehow tie it to LeBron James, and then ESPN will talk about it all day, figure out a way of making it work. But it's talking about the broadcasters are the problem, right? The broadcasters are not bringing alternative sports stories to the producers and doing the legwork and research to truly understand these other leagues, other teams, and what's going on. You're just going to get regurgitated mainstream news at all times. So it's pretty interesting to hear a mainstream guy talk about that. Here we are making the bullpen. And of course, on United Football Media, we try to cover as many teams as we can, give everybody alternative sports content. We've had coaches and players on this podcast that have not been on ESPN and have not been interviewed by national media. We've had some Brahmas players, if you remember the whole Alex Millett touchdown catch from 2024. Got those guys, Pat McAfee, on the Pat McAfee show. It was Brad Wing, Alex Millett got on there. So that was kind of cool. But if you don't have something crazy like that, where can people that want content go find content? And I'm pretty sure I've said this before on this channel, but the reason I started making Brahma content was not because I wanted to be a podcaster and quit my day job and do this. I was tired of not having Brahma's content. I wanted something, so I started making something, and here we are. So it's pretty interesting to hear Tim Brando talk about that. The other thing, a part of this interview, like I said, it was a lot about NIL and stuff. He kind of got into talking about what role in the NFL should play. We have a lot of conversations on social media about should the NFL use the UFL as a minor league team. UFL traditionalists like myself, alternative football guy, does not want that to happen. Do we want free player and coach movement back and forth? 1,000%. Do we want to be NFL minor league team? Absolutely not. We want to be an alternative sports programming for football fans in general, not NFL fans. These NFL fans are all snooty, stuck up, and they just think that NFL football is the greatest thing. Look, this is UFL football. We're looking for football fans. We don't want to be connected. You think about this. Major League Baseball has minor league baseball. Anybody watching this watch a Major League Baseball game? Okay, maybe not. Let me ask you, do you watch minor league games? NBA compared to the G League, right? We have a San Antonio Spurs here in San Antonio. I watch as many Spurs games as I can. I never watched a G League game in my life, even when some of the Spurs players got sent down to G League. And, it's like if you got a sports car and a station wagon, right? What has to happen for you to decide to drive the station wagon, not the sports car, right? Or we'll go NFL, UFL. So you got a Ford 1-ton diesel King Ranch, and then you got a 2500 work edition. Okay, well, when you want the Cadillac, okay, go drive the big nice truck. But when you just want to go get a pickup truck, go get dirty, go do some work at the ranch, you can get the work truck. All right, that's what I feel the UFL is. You got this fancy highballing NFL, which is great. I love it. I watch Cowboys. We've talked about them all the time. But what about when you just want some work done? You don't want to take a leather seat pickup truck out into the cow pasture to do no work. That's what the UFL is for. We're down here putting in work. That's what alternative sports media is for. We're down here putting in work. And how does that tie to NIL and the NFL? Well, let's listen to the other part of this interview on 365 Sports with Tim Brando.
Negative columns written on a daily basis, 24/7, 365. But yeah, a CBA is going to have to be the answer. Contracts are going to have to be signed. And you got to get over this, whether it's pay for play or name, image, and likeness. I mean, the NIL thing was the lawsuit, but the NIL is just a title now. It's anything but. It's really not. These guys are not being paid for name, image, and likeness. They're being paid to come and play. You don't think that kid that was at LSU that was from Michigan got Portnoy's money because all of a sudden he's going to be just Mr. Barstool, okay, and doing shows like Dion does. I don't think so. He's getting paid to go and quarterback Michigan. So Um, those are the items that have to settle down. Okay, and I'm going to tell you, uh, at some point, the NFL should bear, in my view, the NFL should bear some responsibility here too, because the lack of development of some of the players now coming from college to the NFL is a byproduct. We're only on the very fringes of it happening. Okay, these players are coming into the league without the kind of development they once had. You hear it all the time, whether it's a guy like Tom Brady talking about the quarterback position, or other pundits that have been in the league for a long time. Um, I did my first UFL game this past weekend between the Battlehawks and the Stallions, two best teams in that league. And I have to tell you, the product itself is good. They've got a lot of things they got to work on. But one thing's for sure, if you play for 2 or 3 years in that league, like a guy like Adrian Martinez did, all right, who as a college player really never lived up to the billing, but as a UFL player, but was a player of the year and is now, carrying a clipboard in the NFL, he developed a little bit there. There's more development in the UFL than there is in college football. That cannot be the case. You've got to be able to develop players in college football, and I think the NFL should, to some extent, be involved in terms of trying to help the college game out.
Wow. Go back and listen to that whole interview, 365 Sports, or rewind that and listen to the little tidbits he says in there, but just kind of highlight the past two little interviews. First of all, he talked about the technology the UFL is using to broadcast and how great it is. He talked about remote broadcasting, that he wouldn't mind doing UFL games like that. He alluded later in the interview the reason why he wouldn't want to do a college game remote broadcast was because he wants to live the college atmosphere. But then getting into the player development, he's talking about being at the very front end of this major NIL stuff, and where college players actually can make more than NFL contracts, especially the rookie contracts. Quentin Ewers out of the University of Texas, right? He went in the draft, wound up falling way down. He would have made more money coming back and transferring to another school and making whatever money. This Beck guy down in Miami that transferred from Florida, they're saying he's making like $3 or $4 million a year. That's more than what practice players and NFL guys are making, and it might even be more than some active guys. But it is also interesting to hear about what he has seen in the UFL. You take a player in college that's playing the college game and getting paid, and then compare that to what it used to be, where there was always been talks about whether or not a college team's offensive style was matched the NFL style, right? So remember back when they were playing like the RPOs. Well, at the time, NFL wasn't playing RPO, so with the RPO transfer, the option back in the day, Stephen McGee running the option up at Texas A&M, getting his brains beat in all the time. But that option never really translated into the that style of NFL. It was quarterbacks like Kyler Murray was never going to make it in the NFL, and now look what they're doing up there. So you kind of see how he's alluding to players getting paid but not developing into the NFL style of quarterback, and then brought up the UFL and how Adrian Martinez played a bunch of years in college, wasn't able to last NFL, came down to UFL, got some film, got some development, got back to the NFL. Not that we want the UFL to only be a training ground for the NFL, but if the UFL gets to a point where players can come down here and develop and get that reputation, obviously Tim Brando already thinks that exists. That reputation already exists, that you can get some good playing time. And then when he's mentioning the coaches, right? That's the thing about these coaches down here in the UFL. Do we want to have new coaches like the Purdy's of the world, the Peyton Pardis of the world to get an opportunity to be a head coach? Absolutely. But do we need coaches like Wade Phillips that have a decade or more of NFL experience to come down here? Yeah, we need those coaches too. It has to be a mix of both. They have those coaches down here teaching these players how to be NFL pros. There's a cornerback, I can't think of his name right now, out of Houston that was in the NFL, got cut. He's playing for Houston Roughnecks this year. And I just saw an interview on him, how he was talking about he's a professional now. He wants to try the NFL again. When he was there in the NFL the first time, he said he was a dog. Now he went to the UFL and he's had some time to grow and mature. And now he says he's a professional dog. And that's a big deal. That's what the UFL can bring. And speaking of NIL, I'm going to just throw this one in here. And Tim Brandon's talking about it's not pay for play. And, NIL was just the name of the lawsuit. And it is no longer NIL. It is now pay for play. These kids, college football players, are getting paid like NFL players. They are getting paid to play. Paid to play. And look at this. Texas A&M quarterback Marcel Reed signed an NIL deal. No, he's getting paid with a private jet company to play quarterback for Texas A&M. And he joins Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, and Carson Beck as the only college athletes with a private jet deal. Now, this dude's making millions of dollars a year. And evidently, whenever he wants to go somewhere, all he's got to do is call up a jet to take him there. So I don't know if, like, when the rest of the team's traveling to these games this fall, if he's going to let some of those old linemen ride in his jet with him or something. He better let them old linemen up in that jet. They're going to be protecting him. But how is this NIL? Did they put Marcel Reed's face on the jet? Are they trying to sell the Marcel Reed edition of this jet? Is he making jet commercials? I haven't seen any jet commercials. Pay for play. But interesting stuff. Awesome. Go out there and check out 365 Sports. They do an amazing job of covering the Baylor Bears, and then they got a bunch of other stuff on there. So it's a podcast I listen to all the time. So anyways, now getting on to some more Brahma-specific topics. What position would you draft with the number one pick in the 2026 UFL draft? We have locked up the first pick because we have had the worst season out of any team in the UFL. And instead of trying to pick like a player, we might try to do that later. But the players is so random, and who's going to the NFL, who's not. There's just a lot of factors going to it. So it's really hard to pick the players. So what me and producer did is we sat down and we talked about position. Well, I picked D lineman, like real quick. It wasn't even a no-brainer to me. I feel like our wide receivers are pretty talented. I feel like Kellen Mond is the quarterback and can be our quarterback for the future. Our running backs are studs. If McFarland can stay healthy, he's a beast. But Corbin's awesome too, right? I feel like our secondary could probably use some help. So I'm glad producer picked secondary, and our linebackers are great. So I got no complaints on that. But I looked at stats, and I said, where did we have the biggest fall off from 2024 to 2025? And I got the stat that's going to blow your mind. And so that's why I went with D lineman. It's not because I feel like any of our D linemen didn't do work. I'm just saying stats don't lie, and we'll go into that. And then producer pick cornerback. So first of all, he's not here to kind of defend himself, but I do have all of our stats from the cornerbacks here. One of the things that I pulled up was PFF ratings for 2024 compared to them to 2025. So in 2024, we had a 62.04 PFF grade for all of our cornerbacks for the entire season. In 2025, we had a 55.5, so there was a significant drop there. But pass breakups. So if you look at Greedy Williams, if they're in order of our PFF coverage grade for our cornerbacks. And so Greedy Williams was our highest graded coverage cornerback, but he only played one game. He got hurt, got targeted 3 times. Then you got Bo P. Keys, who played a ton of ball for us. He played in 5 different games. But then you got Chris Steele, William Hooper, and Corey Mayfield Jr. All of those guys played in 9 games for us. If you look at their pass breakups, you got 2, 2, and 1. We only got 1 INT by Corey Mayfield Jr. And then Sean Fresh, he just played this last game, just came in here. And, of course, we had Wade Phillips, who was our number 1 cornerback last year. In fact, in 2024, he was the highest PFF graded cornerback in the league. He was traded to Michigan. So those are kind of the stats on cornerbacks. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull up these D-line stats. Check this out. Top right corner of this graphic, just read it for yourself. In 2024, now not all of these sacks were D-line sacks. These are total team sacks. But in 2024, the Brahmas ended the season with 42 sacks. through 9 games, we got 1 game left, and unless they're going to get 30-something stacks, there's a huge discrepancy here. 14 sacks for the season. If you look at our players or D linemen with the sacks, we just signed Bugs like 2 weeks ago, and he's got 2 sacks. Kobe Jones, edge rusher, play that hybrid linebacker, 3 sacks. But you just see a lot of room for improvement, I guess I would put it that way. A lot of room for improvement. You can see our pass rush grades. Isaiah Bugs is our highest graded pass rusher. In 3 games, he's got 2 hits, 2 hurries, and 2 sacks, right? Look at Rashard Lawrence. At the beginning of the season, we thought Rashard Lawrence was going to be filling in that Delonte Scott role. Delonte Scott's one of the guys that we left. Wyatt Ray from last year had a bunch of hits and sacks and hurry that wasn't on our team this year. Rashard Lawrence was supposed to be our next Delonte Scott. 8 games, 5 hurries, 0 sacks, 0 hits. That's going to be frustrating for him because he wants to hit that quarterback. But, you can see where improvements needed. So, with that being said, I want the team to draft D-line help. Producer wants cornerback help. And also, O-line. You can never have enough big men. So, go with that. But every week we're going to move on a little bit. Every week we kind of bring you these season stats. So, here's the attendance for week 9, St. Louis, 27,890. Can't say nothing about that. You'd like that number to be 30,000, but hey, the less people in there, the better. If they'd have had 30,000, it might have dropped 45 on us. But look at that Memphis, 2,044. I'll bring up another Memphis graphic here in a minute, our social media pick. Birmingham, nice rebound. 10,000 is definitely better than 4,000. Very, very good. Houston, 6,600. Hey, man, that needs to be better. And we'll talk about these stat numbers and kind of why I'm showing them to you, because there's some rumblings going around. But this is the Memphis graphic I'll talk about. So this is a Lawrence Dockery. He's a Memphis guy, and I was just on social media, and he busted out these stats here. Tiger football, meaning Memphis Tigers, the college team there. Worst attendance in 12 years. Then Tiger basketball, Memphis Tigers, because they don't have, Memphis is college is one of their big sports teams that they watch there, Memphis Sports, and then they also have the Memphis Grizzlies. But Memphis Tiger basketball college, less than 6,500 per game. The Grizzlies, second worst attendance in the NBA. I don't know what 901 FC is. This guy put it in here. I should have Googled it before, but it gets worse every year, and the team's gone. I don't even know what that is. And then you got the Showboats attendance of 2,000. Now, what does all that have to do with UFL football and the 2,000 Memphis fans at the game? UFL News Hub. Everybody knows Mike Mitchell. They're the old school OG goats of spring football. Been doing it for years. When these guys start posting rumors and sources and saying someone said something, to me, it always seems like a couple years later, a lot of the stuff has some kind of legs, or at least some kind of confirmation winds up coming out about it. So here they're talking about the UFL having 4 new teams in 2026, but using Houston and Birmingham to convert them into new markets and new cities, supposedly because of poor attendance and fan support, and then having 2 brand new franchises. He says if he was a betting man, that one of those 2 teams are going to convert to the Seattle Sea Dragons. Now, I will tell you that UFL News Hub has always been a huge supporter of Seattle Sea Dragon and having a team in Seattle. But then they're also talking about Columbus, Ohio being on the radar. All of this is stemming from the league getting the copyrights renewed for 4 team names: the Oakland Invaders, the Philadelphia Stars, the New Jersey Generals, and the Tampa Bay Bandits. So they're re-upping these trademarks. Whether they're renewing them because they're going to launch a team or they just don't want to lose ownership over them, who knows, but they have been refiled. The other thing is UFL News Horse quoted a source here with the league that says they're probably not going to put a team in California. I personally think Oakland and San Diego are great spots for teams. Now, we do know how expensive it is to do stuff in California with taxes and all that stuff. But, what makes St. Louis a good market is they're still pissed off that the Rams left. Well, San Diego and Oakland are still pissed off that the Chargers and the Raiders live. So, yeah, put a team there. I bet you it'll do great. I guarantee you, I'd be willing to bet everything I have that if you put a team in San Diego, they would get at least double the attendance that Memphis is giving. Way over 2,000 over there. Way over 2,000. But the original plan for the UFL was to add 2 teams in the 26 season and then 2 teams in the 27 season. But who knows, man? Maybe they wind up relocating Memphis or Houston or whatever. I don't know, but it's kind of crazy to think about it. Those people that always tell me the UFL is a football-only market, you know, I've always been a butts in seats, guys. If you watched any of these episodes, I always say butts in seats, butts in seats. That's how you're going to keep your team there. And so if fans don't care enough to go to the games because it's Mother's Day, then don't cry when they relocate your team. Take your mom to the game. Pretty simple. I take my mom to the games. If you follow me on social media, I've even posted pictures of her. Take her to the game. I don't know what else to tell you, but don't be mad when your team leaves. You know, it's your own fault. Go to the game. You know, I don't care if there's a NASCAR race or an IndyCar race. Go to the game. Anyways, with that, we're going to finally get into some Brahma news. All right, we don't got highlights from the game. We scored 13 points. We got our butt kicked. Our best 2 plays were special teams returns, and neither one of those even led to was a touchdown, right? So, anyways, but we do got some Brahma news. One thing that's cool, and it's future-looking, forward-looking news. That's great to hear for San Antonio. June 26th, they're having youth camps here in San Antonio. A flag football youth camp for grades 5 through 12, and a football youth camp in grades 7 through 12 here in San Antonio at Hero Stadium. How cool is that? Everybody wants them to be more in local market. Well, here we are. There's going to be some local market stuff going down in the off season. Brahma's football camps. There'll be players and coaches there. Put it on your calendar, Brahma folks. Be there. Support the team. Maybe we can get more people at the youth camp than what Memphis gets at football games. That'll be interesting. The other thing about Brahma news, since we last did our previous episode, one of the bullpen's own, you know, we've been on the channel, and Savion Patton's a good guy. He's just got a big old heart, and loves the fans and loves San Antonio, loves playing football. So he was released from the team. So I reached out to him, got a comment. I do write an article every week on UnitedFootballMedia.com. I covered this on there. So if you want extra information that doesn't always make the podcast, team specific, player quotes and things like that, that's a good place to look at that. But I just wanted to share this because he has been on the episode. So if you watch these, and I know he wishes he could have finished out the season, but I just reached out to him and asked him for a comment on being released. And you can see there, he said it was a mutual agreement, no hard feelings. He's got problems with his neck. He was hurt back in week 5, sat out a couple of weeks. His neck started to get better. Then he played, and his neck started hurting him again. They did request to place the team, and the general manager did request to place Savion on the injury reserve list, but it didn't work out, whether it was because how close we were to the end of the season or the likelihood of him coming back, or they needed the roster space. I really don't know that, but something happened where it didn't get approved. So Savion and Mark, the team's general manager, agreed that it was kind of best to part ways, let Savion focus on his recovery and also his sports training business that he does for use there. But in good spirits, and I will tell you 100% he wants to come back and play for the Brahmas next year. So we're hoping we get to see him play a lot more snaps in San Antonio wearing that Brahmas uniform. And now I'm going to get into the coaching. I teased this earlier that we don't really know what's going to happen with coaching, and we don't know who's going to be back. If it's going to be Peyton Pardee, you know, we had John Gruden as a dream coach pick last week, and Rick Neuheisel. And of course, we like Peyton Pardee. He's a cool dude, laid back, young guy. Let him grow. You know, get that young hip coach. I'm okay with that. You know, Texas A&M had that hip coach. Kingsbury, they were calling him Coach Cool back in the day. Coach Cool sounds like a 50-year-old man made up that nickname. I didn't make up that nickname. But anyways, check this out. San Antonio Brahmas posted, get your season tickets. We talked about our season ticket renewal being one of the highest in the league. I already got my tickets renewed for next year. I will be there. representing the bullpen in United Football Media. But look what Wade Phillips put in this post. We will win it all next season, right? So is he saying that just because it's we and he loves the Brahmas and loves San Antonio and he loves the UFL and he loves the fans down here? I could definitely see that. But is it we because he's thinking of coming back next year? Maybe not as a head coach, maybe as a general manager or special football operations or something like that. You know, there's no telling what could happen. But if I was going to place a bet right now on underdog on whether or not Wade Phillips would be involved with the Brahmas next year, I'm taking the over. I'm saying yes, he's going to be involved with the San Antonio Brahmas one way or another. As an advisor, as a head coach, as a talent, something or other, whatever. Give him whatever, president, whatever you want to call him, Chief Brahma, head of the cow pasture. I don't care. Get that guy inside the stadium and have him advise us. That's what we need. And it's all about credibility too, right? These players that are going to come down from the NFL, if they were going to say, hey, the bullpen's coaching you, nobody gives a damn, right? Ain't none of them players could be like, oh, yeah, I saw that podcast once. Ain't happening. The point is, you get someone with name recognition like Wade Phillips. These players just might come down here, play a 10-week season for the Brahmas, get some of that development we talked about, Tim Brando talked about, the coaches he's familiar with, and get him down here to play some ball. I think that's definitely got to be part of the future of the UFL. Making sure that we have young coaches getting their names started, but we have those seasoned veterans who already have a name that gives credibility to the league. And absolutely, we'll see where this little tidbit of information goes. But I, for one, would love to see Wade Phillips continuing to be involved with the Brahmas. And I don't know if y'all watch all my social media, but I did get to talk to Wade Phillips 2 weeks ago, and he was in really good spirits. He seemed extremely healthy. Nothing was glaring to me like anything significant was going on. But, yeah, he seemed perfectly fine to me. He definitely looked to me like he could sit down and watch a football game and tell the team what they need to do better next week. That's all I'm saying. Anyways, that's all I kind of got. We're going to get into our picks and predictions to kind of close it out. We'll end it up here real quick. I am now 13-23. I am continuing to pick with my heart. Logic be damned. I want the Battlehawks to win because I hate DC. I want Houston to win just for my boy Ace. No other reason. Of course, I want the Brahmas to win. Give us 2 wins. And then if Birmingham loses, we'll at least be tied for last place with Memphis. I mean, if Birmingham beats Memphis, we'll at least be tied for last place for Memphis. So that's why I'm picking the Birmingham. I want Birmingham to beat Memphis and Brahmas to beat Arlington. So we're at least not the worst team all by ourselves. How about that? And then we got producer. This is, to me, this is even worse because producer's actually picking with his head and using logic and who he actually thinks is going to win. While I'm just picking who I want to win. He's picking who he thinks is going to win. And he's only in 20-16. And he's not even here to defend himself. So I'm going to just say that right there. But he's going with DC. Don't know why. He's going with Michigan. Didn't tell me why. Maybe because he just thinks the better of the two teams. Once again, he picked against the Brahmas. I'm really going to have to question this dude's loyalty. I don't get it. And then the Stallions over the Boats. Anyways, appreciate you for watching. Thanks for joining in. Like, share, subscribe on behalf of United Football Media. We're going to get out of here like we always do with a nice horns forward. Let's go Brahmas, baby.